Hi, Gerry Brinkman at BereaNation.com. I was reading my Twitter feed a little earlier, and somebody had posted that the white evangelical church has never ever really known the gospel, which is a drastic statement to make when you consider that the entire Reformation is included from 1517. Over 500 years, I don't think you can say that. And it was said, to be fair, by a fellow who pastors what I must think of as a black church, and that's fine. People can go where people want to go. They will assemble with people who are like-minded of the faith, and I have no problem with that. But when you tell me that the entire American evangelical church has failed to grasp the gospel, what exactly do you mean? What are you defining as evangelical? And what are you defining as the gospel? And what are you defining as the church? You really need to define your terms. This is a really, really strange statement to make in a format where you're only allowed 240 characters. And if that's the only thing that you posted, I can see why people like Dr. James White would get upset and maybe call you out on that. Now, what I suspect is happening here is that this is something called critical race theory. Critical race theory posits that there is a struggle between races, black and white, as if those were the only two races, and somehow the whites and white privilege have held blacks down and shut them out of positions of authority and power in our church, which I can tell you really didn't happen in my congregation. One of the trustees, that's people with signing authority for the church for a long time, was a very dear friend of mine. His name was Ken. I won't say his last name out of privacy concerns, but Ken was of African descent, and his skin was very, very melanin concentrated. Now, the reason that this is a form of Marxism is it fits a cultural dialectic. One group, we'll call them the thesis, versus the other group, we'll call it the antithesis, conflict together to produce a new group called the synthesis. This is Marxism in a nutshell, up until the last point where it is totally classless, or in this case, I suppose, totally raceless. Well, or there's only one race left. Well, there is only one race, and it's the human race. And I gotta tell you, I know my skin looks white, but I'm not a pale face. I'm actually of a third racial group. My racial group is Mohawk. I'm apparently a quarter Mohawk. And from what I'm told, my ancestors weren't so much enslaved by whites, but a concentrated effort was made to exterminate my people. So genocide. And I gotta tell you, the people who attempted to do that aren't alive anymore. And I don't think that it's fair to hold them responsible for the actions of someone's distant ancestors. Even if my last name was the same as some of theirs, and I guarantee you it's not, because my last name's German, and yet the Mohawk ancestry still comes through my dad's side. It comes through my dad's mother. But anyway, I got to read you a couple of verses here. This is Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3 here, it says, I'm going to start in verse 10. Actually, I'll start in verse 9. Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices. Ostensibly, I think this could include racism, but I have a point here. 10. And have put on the new self, who is being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him. A renewal in which there is no distinction between Greek and Jew. That is a racial difference. Circumcised and uncircumcised. That is a Jewish law. difference. Barbarian and Scythian, that is another nationalistic difference. And slave and freeman, that is an economic difference. But Christ is all and in all. You cannot tell me that Christianity is the white man's religion used to keep people down when you read a verse like this, especially when you understand that Jesus Christ was not a white man, he was Arabic. Verse 12, so, as those who have been chosen by God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, that's that word meekness, perfect power under perfect control, and patience. 13, bearing with one another and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. So, all you folks out there that are trying to make an issue out of this critical race theory mess, stop it, please. First of all, you need to understand the scripture says that there is no longer any racial difference. And in fact, Jesus himself said there is no longer any gender difference. So male and female isn't even an issue here. The only person who's racist is the one who's throwing the accusation. I'm Gerry Brinkman. You're watching Berean Nation. Study the scriptures daily to see if these things are so.